Hi, this is Jan Kabili, welcoming you to the inaugural episode of The Fix, the podcast that's all about Photoshop, Lightroom, and post-processing. In each episode of this podcast, I'll be bringing you a special guest, an author, an instructor, or a photographer like you, who will share solid techniques for making your photos look great after you capture them. Now, this is a video and an audio podcast, and there'll be something in it for each of you. We'll be having giveaways and contests, and you'll have an opportunity to share your own photos using the techniques that the guests demonstrate. You'll find the podcast on iTunes, on YouTube, and on the TWiP network of great photography podcasts located at thisweekinphoto.com. In this inaugural episode of The Fix, I sit down with the leader, the great and fearless leader of TWiP, Mr. Frederick Van Johnson, to talk about The Fix and what we have in store for you here.
All right, folks, another treat for you and for me, actually. So, as you know, the This Week in Photo Network has been growing from one show into many shows that are covering a variety of genres and topics that are all photography related. One of the big areas is obviously Photoshop and Lightroom, post-processing and all that. We have been lucky enough to been granted the presence of Miss Jan Kabili to come on and host our brand new show, which is called The Fix. And this is episode 00. This is ground zero for this awesome new show. So I thought Jan and I would sit down on her show initially to just, I get to be guest zero, on the show and just sort of talk about what the show is going to be, who's going to be on it, what it's all about, and her ethos behind The Fix. Jan Kabili, welcome to your show.
Thank you, Frederick. Oh, my gosh. The problem of doing a show where Frederick is involved is you just spend the whole time laughing because he's so much fun.
I know. Hey, if you can't laugh at life, what's the point, man? Seriously, what's the point? So,
it's true. It's true.
So tell me about The Fix, man. Well, first of all, your background in this stuff goes way back, right? You've written books. You're a lynda.com author, person. You've been dealing with Photoshop since Photoshop was Photoshop, right? So tell us about your pedigree.
That's right. Back in the last century. It was the last century.
Yeah.
I started doing this sort of stuff. I think it was 1999 that I started teaching, and I have been going full blast ever since, trying my darndest to reach everybody that I can with the thing that excites me the most. Yeah. I like photography. I love photography, but I love what comes after photography, and that's what I'm so excited to share with all of you out there and what I've been doing for a really long time.
That's cool. So the post-processing piece, and it's funny, lots of folks, they look at these photos online, like from Trey Ratcliffe and Thomas Hawk and all these people, and they look at the shot and they're like, wow, how come my shots don't look like that? And failing to realize that these guys spend time after the exposure has been made making it theirs, right? The post-processing piece. So just, I don't want to make this into a TWiP episode where we get controversial, but I do want to ask you, the post-processing, some people say post-processing is cheating, right? And some people say, you got to get it right in the camera, and you're being disingenuous to your audience if you mess with the pixels after the fact. Everyone knows that's not what I subscribe to. What do you say to those folks that argue that way?
Well, there's a lot to say about that, but the main thing to say about that is, look, it is true. If you start with a really good shot, then you're halfway, down the street to start with. But think about it. We have always done processing of our photos. It's just that now we're doing processing in a different way. So in the old days, when I used to shoot slides, I would take the slides to the local lab and kind of give up all control over what happened to them after that. Yeah. They were processed. They really were. They were dunked into some goop, and then they were dried, and then they were, put into some frames, and then if I asked them to make prints for me, they were further processed. So all of that was going on behind the scenes. So you can't have a photo without some processing. And your camera does the processing too. I mean, if you shoot a JPEG, then your camera is processing it. So there's always processing. The beauty of the current kind of processing, making it not something negative, but really something positive, is the photographer has the control over what happens after he takes the shot. And that's so exciting. That makes you an artist.
Yeah, and it pushes you to the, you're right. I mean, it gives you that next level of control to make a certain number of those decisions in the computer later, right? You're not locked into, I got to get everything exactly right. Like when I'm out shooting, I typically like to post-process everything that I put online or whatever. And what I tell a lot of people is, because the world that I see through my eyes is different than what my camera is capturing. So I'm trying to get closer to my idealistic version of what planet Earth looks like when I'm post-processing. My world is a little bit more saturated and contrasty, you know?
Yeah, it's right. You know, it's true. It's true. And of course, nobody's just going to take the raw photo out of the camera and post that. It hasn't gone through just the basics that every photographer would want a photo to have, even if that's nothing more than reducing noise and sharpening. So you can stop at that, or you can take it further. You also don't have to just stop at photography. I have a lot of friends who are photo artists who take their photographs and make them into something else using these programs like Photoshop and Lightroom. For example, the obvious example of that is a collage or a composite. Yeah. Even just putting a panorama together from multiple exposures that you've shot on the scene is making something new out of what you captured with your camera.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about The Fix. So your new show, The Fix. First of all, you know, I'm honored to have you doing this show. So thank you, first of all, publicly. Thank you for doing this. And then secondly, what is your mindset behind it? What's your sort of philosophy behind the show that you wanted to do on the TWiP network?
Well, I've got this idea about, I'm sure you've heard the terms digital literacy. Mm-hmm. Well, I've got this idea about visual literacy, that everybody now, not just people who can call themselves professional photographers, but everybody who is shooting and sharing really needs to be literate about what happens after they take the shot. And so that is what I'm excited to help people learn how to do. And I think one way to do that is to get a lot of different viewpoints. So what I'm trying to do with the show is not have it just be Jan Kabili is going to teach you Lightroom or Photoshop. If you really want that, you can go over to lynda.com and you can listen to my courses ad nauseum, and I will, teach you as me. But I think there's a real value to getting a lot of different voices inputting about how to use these programs, and also to have photographers explaining to you how they use them in a practical sense day to day to get, a particular look or to get an outcome that they want. So that's what I'm trying to do with the show, is bring to this audience of people who really need this information, that need to be visually literate, a lot of different voices that are going to help you to learn to use these tools and to get the results that you want from your photos.
Yeah, and that's great, and that's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to the show as well, is because, especially in Photoshop, there's a million different ways to do one thing, right? And I find that I learn a lot just by seeing how really good people do simple things. Like, how do you make a new layer? Some people are always file new layer. Some people are clicking the new layer icon in the palette. Some people duplicate a layer with Command J and then delete it. There's all these millions of ways to do one thing, and there's no one right way, right? But it depends on what your outcome is. So, like, the folks that you're planning on having on the show, I'm excited to see what their process is using the same tools that I have on my machine, right?
Oh, yeah, and I think you're going to see a lot of different processes. Just the way you see a lot of photographers explaining how they capture a photograph. They do it in lots of different ways. One of the things is, what kind of photograph is it? So your processing also changes depending on what kind of photograph you've shot, the tools you use, the way that you go about it. So we'll be looking at that too.
That's great. So who's gonna tell us about the show? Who's gonna be on? What do we have look forward to in the upcoming episodes?
Well, we're going to have a real variety of guests. These are going to be the people that have written the books, the people that you've heard of, not all of them, but many of them, the people that are kind of like the icing on the cake, the people we want to be. I'm so lucky because I've had the opportunity to meet so many of those great men and women over my long career of doing this, and they're all eager to share in any way that they can. So, for example, can I say who some of our guests are going to be?
Absolutely. Tease it, yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, I've had the honor of sitting and talking with Mr. Dave Cross. He's going to be one of our guests, and he's going to be showing us how to do something that I know everybody out there wants to figure out, and that's luminosity masking, so that you can so that you can adjust different parts of your photo depending on the tonal values of different parts of the photo.
So cool.
So that's going to be great. Yep. And following that, we're going to hear from Lisa Snyder. Now, if you don't know the name Lisa Snyder, you will know the name of the many books she's written. She is the author of the Missing Manuals for Photoshop.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. So right there, that's like a 1-2 punch in instruction on this stuff, like getting a level deeper. So you get under the covers with Photoshop coming out of the gate.
Oh, absolutely. And then we have more people coming up after that. We have Lori Brubin, who is a terrific wildlife photographer, who's going to talk to us about how she processes her photographs of animals, which is something I think a lot of people love to shoot, and she's got some real insights for us about that. We're going to have Deke McClelland is going to be here. He's the famous lynda.com author. We're going to have Sean Kernan, who will be here talking to us about getting really creative with your photos. So, not just doing straight photography, but getting a little more creative in your approach. And lots of other amazing guests.
That's great. See, already coming out in 2015 swinging. Look at that. Well, Jan, I want to thank you again for doing the show. I can't wait to see the audience reaction to what you put out there. I know you've been working really hard on this, so that's much appreciated. And it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a wild Photoshop pixel ride over 2015. So.
It is going to be so cool. I just can't wait to get started. And thank you, Frederick, for having me and allowing me this opportunity. It's really great, and I really hope that everybody out there loves it. And we're looking for your input, too. So as you're watching the shows, I hope you'll comment. I hope you'll post your own photos, trying out the techniques that the guests show, and tell us if there's something that you'd like to see. And we're happy to bring it to you.
Wonderful, wonderful. If you're watching this video on YouTube, you can head over to thisweekinphoto.com/subscribe, and you'll find Jan's show as well as all the other shows in the TWiP network. But this one is going to be awesome, and it's the newest kid on the block, so we'll see. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, let's rock it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jan.
Bye, Frederick.